More than 32 years have passed since American student Annie McCarrick vanished from South Dublin, her fate a haunting mystery. But now, detectives have dug up a house in Clondalkin, cadaver dogs are on the scent, and a 62-year-old businessman long whispered as a suspect was just arrested and released. What triggered this sudden resurgence in the investigation? Stay tuned, because the ground beneath Ireland's coldest case is shifting, and the truth might finally be coming to light. Annie McCarrick was a 26-year-old woman from Long Island, New York, who moved to Ireland in 1993 to study and connect with her Irish roots. She lived in Sandymount, a quiet neighborhood near the Dublin coastline. On the morning of Friday, the 26th of March, Annie withdrew money, went grocery shopping, and was captured on CCTV in a local store. She told her flatmate she might head to the Wicklow Mountains for the afternoon. That was the last confirmed sighting. By evening, Annie missed dinner plans, and by the next day, she was reported missing. 32 years later, no trace of her has ever been found. Until now, perhaps. For decades, there were whispers. A man in Annie's orbit, older, established, and reportedly infatuated with her. He was not a stranger. He was a businessman based in South Dublin, and according to those who knew Annie, he had shown an unusual and persistent interest in her before she disappeared. In June of this year, Gardaí arrested a 62-year-old man under Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act. He was questioned for 24 hours and then released without charge. But he remains the only person ever arrested in connection with Annie's case. Investigators believe he may have lured her into a trap, and they're now dismantling every piece of his past. In the last 48 hours, Gardaí have quietly gone back to the source, re-interviewing former friends, colleagues, and the suspect's close associates. They're asked the same questions again, but with fresh eyes. Where were you in March 1993? Did his story match yours then? And now, it's about spotting contradictions. Reports say more than 5 separate alibis are under scrutiny. Some came from notes faxed to Garda 3 decades ago, accounts that friends believed were glossed over, and now they're being compared line by line with today's statements. Investigators are also examining whether the suspect verbally admitted something unfamiliar back in the 90s. This isn't just a casual check-in. Armed with improved forensic timelines, digital device analysis, and new witness recollections, detectives are mapping who said what and when. The aim: expose any cracks in the suspect's story or reveal people whose memories might fill in the missing pieces. The investigation has led Garda back to a quiet residential street in Clondalkin, West Dublin, a location that was once closely associated with the suspect. The house in question was either occupied by him or used by him around the time Annie disappeared. In early June, search teams began excavating the site, working alongside cadaver dogs, forensic archaeologists, and ground-penetrating radar units. It's not a random dig. Garda believe this property may hold physical evidence or even human remains linked to Annie McCarrick. The entire backyard has been cordoned off. Machinery was brought in to remove slabs, soil, and structural elements. The operation is delicate, systematic, and guided by the hope of finally giving Annie's family something they've waited more than 3 decades to hear: the truth. So far, no remains have been found, but Gardaí say the search is far from over. One of the most striking leads to resurface involves a heated public altercation that took place at a wedding reception shortly after Annie McCarrick disappeared. The man who is now the primary suspect reportedly became loud, erratic, and emotional, drawing attention from several guests. Witnesses have told investigators that his behavior during the argument was agitated and strange, and some even remember him saying things that, in hindsight, felt deeply troubling, possibly even incriminating. At the time, most people didn't think to connect the dots, but now, 3 decades later, Gardaí are circling back. They're re-interviewing those who were present that day, not just to recall what was said, but to analyze how it was said, because sometimes the smallest, most offhand remark can reopen an entire case. Gardaí are hoping that this wedding confrontation was the moment his mask cracked, if only for a second. Over the years, Gardaí have quietly compiled a profile of the suspect's behavior leading up to Annie McCarrick's disappearance, and what they uncovered paints a disturbing picture. Multiple individuals close to Annie described his interest in her as far from casual. He was said to have followed her movements, appeared uninvited at places she frequented, and spoke about her obsessively to friends and acquaintances. One person told investigators that Annie had grown uncomfortable around him. Another recalled her trying to avoid him at public gatherings. But in 1993, there were few legal protections for stalking or psychological harassment, especially when no physical harm had occurred. Now, viewed through today's lens, that same behavior looks deeply predatory. Detectives believe it may have escalated in the days just before she vanished. It's no longer a question of whether there was obsession, it's whether that obsession turned lethal. For more than 32 years, Nancy McCarrick has lived with the weight no parent should ever carry: the disappearance of a child with no answers, no closure, and no justice. From her home in New York, Nancy made countless trips to Ireland, met with investigators, held press conferences, and even walked the Wicklow Hills herself, searching for signs of her daughter. She never gave up, and neither did her legal advocate, Michael Griffith, who has long pushed Irish authorities to treat Annie's case with the seriousness it deserves. Now, as renewed searches and witness interviews unfold, Nancy remains in close contact with Gardaí. According to her legal team, she's cautiously hopeful that this may finally be the turning point. Her message is simple but unshakable. We believe someone Annie trusted hurt her, and we believe they can still be brought to justice. After 3 decades of silence, what suddenly pushed Annie McCarrick's case back into the spotlight? Gardaí aren't revealing all the details publicly, but several key developments are believed to have reignited the investigation. First, new forensic tools, including advanced radar scanning and soil analysis, made it possible to revisit old locations like the Clondalkin property with far greater precision. Second, retired detectives who originally worked the case have reportedly returned in advisory roles, bringing fresh eyes and deeper context to old leads. But most crucially, new witness statements, possibly triggered by media exposure, guilt, or changing loyalties, are now challenging the suspect's original alibis. Multiple sources say this sudden wave of inconsistencies may have shattered the fragile timeline that once protected him. The result? For the first time since 1993, Annie McCarrick's disappearance is no longer treated as a cold case. It's being pursued as an active murder investigation. As Gardaí continue digging in Clondalkin, Ireland watches. 32 years ago, Annie McCarrick walked out of her apartment and vanished. No body, no crime scene, no confirmed suspects until now. With a key figure arrested and released, former witnesses speaking out, and new technology guiding investigators underground, the momentum has shifted. Annie's case is no longer a footnote in Ireland's missing persons files. It's back on the front page, loud, raw, and urgent. And for the McCarrick family, every clump of earth removed from that backyard in Clondalkin could be the one that answers the question they've carried for over 3 decades. What really happened to Annie? And is the man who knows finally about to face justice?